a word of invitation for just the gift of gathering to be part of democracy in action, right? To be connected to each other. I'll float around so that we don't have to turn our necks too much. But the gift of being together in this space and to exchange ideas respectfully, and it's so wonderful, and I want to thank our candidates for being here tonight. Just words of hospitality. You're welcome to everything that we do here at St. Peter's Church, and that especially includes the snacks. And so there's food that's been donated. Please feel free to get up and get what you need. There's coffee. It's regular. The best way to get that into the styrofoam cup is to lead with a strong finger so that you get a good pour, but just commit, because if you go halfway, you're going to get, coffee fingers. Restrooms are there, so our camera folks can be aware of that and maybe not track anybody as they're heading where they need to go. Yeah, it's such a gift to be here. And if it's okay, I'd love to offer a prayerful meditation before we head into this. I usually only go about 30 minutes. I'm kidding. Let's just take a breath together. Loving God, we thank you for gathering us together in this space as we live into the ideals set forth by those who have come before us. We thank you for gathering us together as friends and neighbors, as we exchange ideas, as we come to know our candidates, and we thank you for our candidates who have offered themselves up for public service. Thank you for the courage and vulnerability that's required to step forward and say yes to a call to serve. We ask you to bless this time, that it may be fruitful and productive as we hear from our candidates and exchange ideas here in the city of Milford. And we ask that you bless us as we seek to discern the best path forward with your help and by your grace. Amen. Thank you. I'm going to hand off to my friend and co-conspirator, Teresa Eek, who has been voluntold. She's moderating tonight. Has volunteered from All In for Milford, and I want to thank All In for Milford for hosting this evening. All I have to do was show up and help make coffee. So we're glad to be here together. And Therese, here you go.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lindemann and St. Peter's, for hosting us. So appreciate your generosity in opening up this space for us.
I forgot we may want to set cell phones to stun.
I was just going to say, please take this moment to silence your cell phones. And I want to remind everyone that this is being live streamed. You will be on camera. So if you would prefer not to be, now is your chance to leave. It may be too late. So I just want to welcome everybody to All In for Milford's first ever candidates conversation. We thank all of you for being here in person and online. Your participation is what keeps our democracy strong. We thank our candidates, Carrie Rowland and Alderman Tony Genatasio, for participating. This event, as I said, is being live streamed. In particular, of course, we thank Pastor Lindemann. We also thank very much the Milford Government Access Television folks who were here. I did ask if they wanted to be on camera to receive thanks, and they all declined. But we are very grateful that they are here and performing this service for us. And finally, we thank Haven's Harvest for providing all the wonderful goodies. So All In for Milford is about making it possible for everyone to get involved in the decisions that affect our lives. Every one of our events, just like the housing and food community gatherings we've had in the past 2 months, have that as their goal. That's why this community gathering will look and feel a little different from other events with candidates. This is not a forum, and it's not a debate. It's a conversation. about questions and issues that matter to all of us. Everyone here is invited to take part in that conversation. I'll talk more about that later. During this evening, because people matter more than opinions, I ask that we agree to the following. Everyone's time is valuable. We will abide by time limits. Only one person speaks at a time. There will be differences of opinion and style. When we differ, we critique ideas, not people. We will all make mistakes, especially me. So let's be kind to each other. I have to flip my page now, hold on. So now I'd like to ask, is this something that everyone can agree on? Can we have a show of hands? All right, we are all in. So after tonight's program, we welcome any of you to stay and talk more with the candidates and with each other. We know where the bathroom is, and now I'm going to ask Lynn to tell us a little bit about herself. She is our moderator extraordinaire for the Inner Circle. Go ahead, Lynn.
Thanks, Teresa. I want to just thank All In for Milford for the honor of coming down and moderating this event. As Teresa said, I'm from Oxford, a 41-year resident of Oxford, and proudly a part of All In for Oxford. So that All In concept is growing. And the word I think we all love to use is alliance. That means we're allies. So the reason I'm here, delightedly and proudly, is because as an ally, I want to support the other communities, the other all-in groups, because we'll be calling on them too to support us. So thank you for letting me come down and help out.
Thank you so much, Lynn. We just so appreciate your being here tonight. So before we start, I'd like to go over a little bit about what you can expect tonight. So we are going to begin with a story introduction. We'll begin with sharing our stories with each other for about 2 minutes. So why are we doing this? Stories are central to All In's work because shared stories help us know and understand each other better. When we share our stories with each other, we go from our separate experiences to seeing what we all have in common. At this time, I ask that you each turn to your neighbor, take turns sharing about what brought you here, and let's just take a couple of minutes doing that.
So I'll go this way again. Are you a lifelong Milford resident?
Yes. My parents both came here, like I mentioned to you before, and started businesses. So
Where did they come from?
Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in Danbury, so that was my original home.
So they came up here, so I was raised here, went to public school, raised my family here. I married my wife, Andrea. She's a public school teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
Okay.
I have a daughter who's 24 and a son who's 22. My daughter's in grad school at Fordham. She's studying to be a psychologist. And my son is in his 5th year at Fairfield U studying for his master's in finance.
Good Jesuit schools.
Yeah.
I went to Holy Cross.
Oh, okay.
Yes, all the way through Red Cross, various things, Girl Scout leader. So, she's going to go to Bali at 35. I know I'm more interested in help veterans, they're helping
Great.
people.
What did he teach? Math?
Like that.
Math,
Okay.
physics,
Okay.
junior Amity
I can't
schools.
Yeah, it's a great district.
We raised our kids all in Oxford.
So anyway, I went to
Okay.
the first one in January, and I found out
Got a
that
lot of boys.
Yeah.
there's some great
Yeah. I have one sister. I come from a family of 4, 3 boys, 1 girl. Yeah.
I have one brother.
Are you Italian?
My maiden name is Vaccarelli.
Okay.
It's funny. You actually, they talk about the gene pool.
Zaccarelli?
Vaccarelli.
Okay, because there's Vicarellis in Milford.
of course, the blue ones, I was like, what's
yeah. That's what they say. Well, I'm 100%.
Oh, I'm half
Okay.
Italian, half Irish.
So my mom is here. Norma,
Okay,
she's all the way to
folks.
the right with the reddish hair.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
wrap
my
up
dad-
our
both my parents are
stories.
still alive. My dad's 81.
All right, everyone.
Wow, your dad's only a few years older than my husband.
I know this is a lot of fun.
people about food insecurity, food in the health department. So
All right, everybody.
we brought
It is time, and we do want to be mindful of everybody's time. And wasn't this fun? Did people enjoy that? This is why we share stories. All right, so now I am going to turn it over to Lynn, and she is going to carry on with the next portion.
So I'm going to be focused now on the inner circle here. And just going to ask each of you, and I'm going to start with Charlie, who's across from me, in just a couple minutes, please share who you are, what brought you here, and what you're excited about.
Well, thank you. My name is Charlie Montalbano. I've been in Milford for 40-odd years, and I was drawn to the group because of what they want to do, and that is to provide everyone with an opportunity to live a good life, to have enough food to eat and a place to live. Sounds like reasonable to me. I certainly have had what I would consider a charmed life in some ways. I live a good life here in Milford, and I'd like to share that with everyone else. I'm basically retired now, so it's truly charmed.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah Bromley. I'm just really excited because I like connecting people, and I like connecting to people, and I get really impatient with division and silos and walls between people and ideas. So I really like just connecting with other people, and I think that really part of why I'm in this group is I think that when we get to share our stories with each other, we can find common ground on so many things. But first we have to get in these spaces where we can have those conversations. So that's why I'm excited about tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tony Giannatasio. I was raised in Milford. My mother Norma's here tonight. Say hi to my mom. I come from a family business background. My mom's an entrepreneur. She started a business in Milford. She's a hairdresser. She's had a hair salon for many, many years, and she's still working today. My father also started a business in Milford. So they came here for opportunity, and this is where I was raised. I went through the public school system, and I'm proud of that, and I've learned a lot, and I was always interested in outreach to know more about my community, so I got involved in public service, and I volunteered my time, and it's been 20 years. I served 4 years on the Planning and Zoning Board and 16 years on the Board of Aldermen, and I truly enjoyed every moment, and I came to All In from Milford as an outreach to become more educated, and they've embraced me with open arms. I've made some really good, true friends here, and I want people to know that I want what's best for everyone in Milford, and that's the purpose of attending these meetings, to learn more, to help people that aren't as fortunate as some of us here in this room, and that's our mission as a community, and that's what I'm running on, and I want to support everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Carrie Rowland, and obviously I'm one of the candidates as well. I also was born and raised here in Milford, as was my husband. We became very good friends in 5th grade, meeting at a wiffle ball game in the backyard of a friend's house, or near my house. It's been a journey for us, because when you meet somebody so young, right, you sort of grow up in this fantasy world of how wonderful life is. And I think having left for both high school, I was here as a freshman at Foreign, but then went off to boarding school so that I could play hockey on a girls' team instead of with the boys, and then played again at Boston College, and then decided to come home and get married to my best friend. And we raised our children here, who went through the schools. They sometimes take circuitous routes through their education, and all of that has taught me a lot about why this kind of organization is so important, and because not everybody is the same. And we all come into this room tonight with different perspectives and different ideas for solutions and things that we can offer from our own background of knowledge to what can help people in the community that aren't as fortunate as many of us here in the room today. And I too am very blessed with a family that's been very supportive through difficult times. But I also bring a whole set of challenges that I've faced as I navigated my career. When I left Boston College, I had an English and secondary ed degree, and they were laying off teachers. And I had debt from both high school and college to deal with. So I jumped into a small business and made the most of it so that I could pay off my debt. So I know the struggles. And so I'm just honored to be here and to have been to the meetings to learn more about what we can do together. Working together is definitely going to help us solve these problems.
Christy Preet. I came to All In for Milford around January of this year after meeting with the executive director at Bethel Center around this time last year, fall time. She asked me if I knew about All In for Milford. I said, no, I've never, maybe a little bit, but so in January I came to the monthly meeting, I think, and then what we call the food bucket, but we should be calling it team now. It's the food team that really does focus on food insecurity and how we can be sure that all of our community is fed. Over the course of the beginning of the year, it became apparent I still had a lot of relationships in the school system, just from being a very involved parent, PTA, PTO, PTA council, lots of different things. So I still had a lot of relationships, and I was also substitute teaching, so I was able to make connections and ultimately met with the director of food services and operations and ultimately Dr. Kutaya, and we just started a food share table at one school as a test. So we are making progress, so we are not throwing away food. The kids sometimes, this year they get free breakfast and they're throwing it in the garbage, so we're trying to save that and just trying to make sure we're all on the same page about our kids and our families being, having all they need.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and I wish we had time to hear everybody's stories, but we don't want to have to stay here all night. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the next part of this evening. This is called a fishbowl format. So let me explain that. In a couple of minutes, Lynn will ask the first of 4 questions that will guide the rest of tonight's conversation. After asking each question, each of the candidates will have the chance to share their thoughts for 2 minutes. Please stick to that time limit because, again, we value everybody's time. Hold on, I gotta flip my page. So after we hear from each candidate, we'll open the conversation up to everyone sitting in the inner circle. If you, everyone in the outer circles, if you would like to join the conversation, you can stand up, come to the circle, tag someone, and they will get up, move to your seat, and you move in. Make sure before you tag someone that they have had the chance to speak at least once before you tag them out. Don't just tag them out before they've said a word. That just wouldn't be fair. So when you are in the circle, you can participate fully in the discussion, sharing your thoughts and asking your questions. You're welcome to bring in facts, stories, and ideas. We ask that you participate in the discussion at hand and respond to the 4 questions that Lynn asks, rather than shifting the conversation to unrelated topics. I don't want to hear about the snowplow that hit your car last year. So let's keep it to the questions that are being asked. Does this make sense to everybody?
Just clarify. The people to tap are not candidates.
No. Oh, thank you. Yes, yes, yes. I was going to say, you can tap out anyone except for the candidates, and we need Lynn, our moderator. So that does cut it out. Thank you so much and it's even written here. So again, I apologize. I know this is where the kindness part comes in. I knew I was going to make mistakes. Okay, so.
How could I screw this up?
Well, I've already done a good job of that. So, any other questions? Does this make sense to people? Is it clear? And it's okay. You can ask any kind of question. Yes, Christy.
Are we spending a certain time block on the one, 15 minutes, 15?
Yes. Lynn is the one who's going to be handling, again, the inner circle. So we're going to be trading back and forth. All right.
Okay. So,
Everybody ready? So go ahead, Lynn.
so if I look toward you expectantly, it might be because you've gone over your limits. So I'll be putting on my mother's cap and saying, okay, give up the mic. But let's start with our first question. So the question is directed first to Carrie and Tony. Do you believe we all have the responsibility to meet the basic needs of everyone in Milford, including a place to live, enough food to eat, good education, health and mental health care, and a clean and safe environment? If so, what are you prepared to do as the mayor in order to make that happen? And how can the rest of us help? And for this question, we'll start with Carrie.
Thank you. That's a lot in that question. And it's a lot to cover in only 2 minutes, so I might start talking really quickly. But I've already begun to have meetings at Bethel, at Bridges. I went to the meeting last night, community conversation for education, so that we can talk about a lot of these issues and how they're interconnected. And like I said in my opening, perspective is critical. We can't all come from the same place and expect to solve problems from some other place that we are not familiar unless we're ready to listen and have conversations like this so that we can understand what the true issues are that we're faced with. So that's what I've already begun to do, because I believe that the more knowledge I have before taking the office of mayor, the more equipped and ready I'll be to bring those groups together. Similar to what Sarah said in her opening, we don't solve problems in silos with walls up and with only, I can't talk to Tony because he's from a different party. That's not true. We need to work together to solve these problems because they're so complex and so big. How'd I do it? Under 2 minutes.
A model answer. Tony?
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, so through my tenure of my public service and my experience, I've earned the reputation of working across party lines, being very bipartisan, collaborating with department heads. I've done that, every budget cycle, the 16 budgets that I've actually adopted, and it has a lot to do with nonprofits. It's funding. And sometimes the nonprofits were struggling at times when the state ran out of money and they didn't have enough money. So we put forward additional funding. We've increased some of those line items because of the struggle with the state. So I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to, lead in that direction, and I've demonstrated that through my votes. The same thing with the Board of Ed. I know education was a part of it. I fully reinstated the full funding. I made the motion of $1.8 million in order to keep Harborside open so it wouldn't close. And I'm proud of that. My wife's an educator, Andrea. She's here tonight. She's been in education over 30 years. She's a special ed administrator. So, I'm well versed in all of these things. And, communication is key. And you have to know your city, you have to know your environment, you have to know your demographics, and you have to be a good communicator. And that happens to be one of my strong points. I sit down, I meet with people, I listen. You have to be a great listener. You can't just make decisions under pressure. You have to listen, you have to meet, and you have to collaborate. So I know what it is to be mayor. I'm ready to be mayor on day one. Thank you.
Anyone in the circle who'd like to share their thoughts.
It's not just because I could use the bathroom break that I'm going first at all, or that I'm a little thirsty and didn't get water. Lynn's first question, right, was like I'd like to ask the candidates each, like, so, like, it was like, do you agree that we all deserve that, with all those things that you listed, right? And you said, if so, but I'd like to just ask, like, do each of you agree that that list of things that Lynn mentioned, do you agree? Yes. Do you agree? Yes. Cool. And that follow-up part about, like, how can we help, that's what I'd like to see if you have time to, well, of course you have time, but, like, if you could share any ideas about how all of us together could help whichever of you ends up in this role.
Well, it's more of a statement. I think sometimes we, when we think about housing needs, we think about people who are unhoused. We immediately bring up Bethel Center and all like that. But there are a lot of people, young people, who are just starting out in careers in this town, being new policemen, firemen, teachers, who can't find apartments that are affordable or houses that are affordable. That's a big part of what we need in Milford. Now, we just had a really nice boost, we hope, by the mall being what they're going to do. And do you folks feel that we need more of that so that we can have housing for, just regular people who are simply looking for it to stay in Milford and raise their families?
Absolutely. My own children are faced with that as my son has left town. They went to, every time a house would go on the market, they would call the real estate agent, say, can we get in there? And they'd say, there's already a deposit. They literally went through this for months and months and months. And now, unfortunately, they're in Trumbull, and luckily, they're not out of state. And my daughter feels as though she'll never be able to afford a place on her own, and it's discouraging. And I met someone the other day who is a senior and sold his house because the market is so strong, got $20,000 more than the asking price, and is now homeless effectively because can't find a place to downsize. So this affects people broad spectrum in various ways, that he doesn't want to leave Milford and is now living temporarily with relatives. And is frustrated, and even asked me, like, do you know of any places that are available? And it's almost as if we can't wait for a house to go on the market. You have to know somebody who's going to put their house on the market. And that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, perspective. A lot of us have the privilege of knowing people who are in a house and want to move before it actually goes on the market. People who are not as lucky as all of us to have such connections and relationships may not have that leg up on other people. So the housing that we're generating at the mall and continuing to do mixed development will help both of those situations that I described.
Tony, did you want to respond?
Thank you. Charlie, so I was at the meeting as well, and I'm very happy with the outcome. I know they agreed to 10% affordability. It would have been nice to get more affordability, but it's a start. I can tell you, being on the Board of Aldermen, we've made some great strides. We've adopted the ADU units. So if your children or your parents, elderly people, seniors, want to live in your house and make it more affordable to live there, you can actually build an apartment that's within your house. And you can charge an affordable rent, you can help people get started, or you can help people in retirement that are on fixed incomes. I think that's going to have a positive effect on our housing. It's going to help us meet our quota. And furthermore, I would partner with developers in strategic areas where they would bring affordability to the table. I think that's what we need. The good news is that the moratorium has been lifted, so it's going to bring in more of these types of applications. And we just passed on the Board of Aldermen the Plan of Conservation Development, which outlines and identifies more affordability in certain areas of the city, in certain districts. And that's what we need. We need to encourage that. So as your mayor, I would definitely be interested in working with people that have the same ideas and share the same values as we do here today. Thank you.
Christy, did you have anything you wanted to add to this question? I don't need to. Okay. All right. I'm going to go on to the second question, if that's okay with folks. And Tony started to address it a little bit. It appears Milford has yet to meet its own goals for ensuring housing options that work for everyone. As Tony mentioned, the moratorium is over, and Milford is now even further from achieving its goal. The city has recognized the need for change and even created the tools needed to make that change, including an affordable housing plan, a plan of conservation and development, a fair rent commission, and an allocation of funds from the American Rescue Plan. So, what has stopped Milford from making more progress? How can everyone work together to improve housing options and stop our neighbors from being priced out of their own community? I know this sounds like what we've been talking about. I'm going to let Tony start on this question.
Thank you. So what we're experiencing now is a shift in the market. I just want to be clear, is we have a lot of vacancies, storefronts on the post road, retail. We have vacancies in office buildings. So what's that actually doing is putting more pressure on the homeowners. That's driving up property taxes on the homes. We need to fill these spaces, and if they can't be filled because people aren't renting office spaces, we need to be creative in what we do and partner with some of these owners of these buildings and see if we can convert them to apartments or more affordable apartments or even senior housing. I talk to seniors, I'm knocking on doors. They want one level. They don't want stairs. So we have to, also encourage that type of development, 55 and older, ranch style. They don't want to go up and down stairs. They're not interested in that. They want easy living, accessibility. And these are the things that I would do as mayor. I would be proactive. I would do an outreach with all the property owners that are struggling to fill these spaces and see what we can do to make it work for everyone, and which will help our community grow and become stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that I enjoy personally is pickleball, and we have the new business that went into a space for indoor pickleball. And so I think that kind of creativity that you mentioned is what we have to look at. And definitely we have to look at mixed use because like at the mall, with that assessed value dropping so dramatically, when we add housing and we minimize the number, there won't be as many vacancies. And then the value of the mall will increase and the tax base will increase. And as you say, the homeowners won't be as burdened as they are today. But how do we get there? And it starts with this kind of communication and communication with people who are not here tonight, because what we're seeing, and the meeting that you two talked about last night started with an 830G project on Shell Avenue in a neighborhood that most of the Shell Avenue residents came out and were opposed to because of parking and safety issues down on the shore. So it's important that we understand that neighborhood development is something that the community, that I'm hearing at least, is not for. And so we have to think about how do we be creative and make sure that the developers that we're seeking, who have the same values as us, are understanding what our community is asking when 830G gives them almost a free rein as to where they go. So I think we have to be a little bit tough too, and really wrap our arms around what we want as a community so that we can sort of tell these developers how it's going to go and what we want and encourage them to do that. So that would be my just slight change.
Thank you. Anyone here in the circle would like to respond or add comments? Don't feel pressure. Yes? That's why you're here.
Yeah, I appreciate both of your responses, and it's, from the ADUs and the mall, there have been some positive changes. I think I spend a lot of time talking about housing and affordability, and one thing that has become clear to me is that we're almost having two different conversations around housing affordability. So there's the conversation around what percent of the 830G quota, if you like, are we at? We're at 5.2%, and the state wants us to be at 10% before we have a moratorium or before it no longer applies. And that's an important number. We need more of that kind of housing. But it's not the only kind of housing that makes Milford more affordable as a community. So I think about the fact that, you know, it's according to the affordable housing plan that the Planning and Zoning Board passed on last year, 48% of renters and 26% of homeowners here are cost burdened by housing. That means they spend more than 30% of their income. So when I'm, you know, walking around my neighborhood, that's 1 in every 4 homes that they're cost burdened by housing. And if you're in an apartment building, it's every other door that you're at. And the way to address that is not just with, you know, 830G housing, but it's also with, you know, what we like to call gentle density, or changes that, for like the ADUs are part of that. ADUs don't count towards 830G, but they are more affordable because they're smaller and people can rent them. You know, it would be nice to see something I've heard some about is, you know, detached accessory dwelling units, because now they have to be attached. We could allow more duplexes and triplexes in our single-family neighborhoods. Our single-family neighborhoods are zoned by size, like lot size, so we could change it so that they're allowed to build smaller homes. And this is all things you can do without, these are all things you can do. Gotta use good grammar when I'm on a microphone. It really shouts it right back at you. These are all things we can do that make Milford a more affordable place to live, but that don't involve putting a 20 apartment complex right on the beach on Shell Avenue, which frankly, I wouldn't like to live next to that. It's a small street, so I just wanted to add that.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm actually an urban planner working in Bridgeport. I cannot believe the amount of facts that just came out of you, because I was about to just go into that to a T. So I'm really happy to hear that other people are really into affordable housing units, especially yourself especially. But I actually came to sit down to show what I'm a clear example. I actually started in an affordable housing unit in Westport. Out of all places, my rent was about $800 a month in the heart of downtown, and that helped me get on my feet. I was working in city of Norwalk at that point. I got enough to move out, and I came here. But with inflation, with the economy going nuts, I'm sure everyone can feel it's starting to get a little tight. And I'm always welcoming density. That's the one thing urban planners love, is density. It helps support our businesses. It helps support our economy in the area. But I am afraid of the luxury apartment units that are coming into town. I always support a minimum affordable housing percentage for all developments. I'm always scared because I live around the corner from the new apartments that are going to go up. And even though there's a supposed grocery going to be there, my my lease is coming up next month, and honest to God, I'm terrified that it's going to go up by another $100, $200 again. And you want your kids to live in Milford. You want your kids to live in Milford. I want to live in Milford and then eventually have my kids in Milford. But I'm going to leave if my rent goes up again. So I want that to be a harsh reality for y'all.
Harry, response?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Matt. So, Joe, I think part of your question was, you know, the criteria of what's affordable and what's not affordable. So I want to work with the state delegation. I think we have to bring that to a state level, and we have to change the criteria to make the ADUs count towards our percentage. Because we have other units that are maybe built in 1997 that aren't even qualified because they have to be remodeled. So there are some inroads that we can take in order to get our percentage up. To your point, Matt, I don't want you to be scared, because I think what's going to happen is the more apartments, that affordable apartments that are in here, it's going to keep these other developers with the high luxury apartments in check. So it's competition, it's capitalism, but in this regard, what's going to happen is they're going to have to lower their rents because there's more competition. So I think that hasn't happened yet, but when I become mayor, I want to make sure that it's a level playing field.
I just hope it happens soon enough for you, Matt, because developing the mall is going to take some time. And the reality is your lease is up in a month. And I'd love to say that there would be 250 units that will help keep your rent down, but I'm worried. I'm worried exactly for what you're talking about. I'm very aware of it. But when you talked about other ways, it made me think of my childhood walking down Platt Street to get to Point Beach School, which no longer exists. And so many of the houses in that area down in Point Beach and even along Platt as you get to the condominiums were duplexes, multi-families. And you know, maybe that is the way that we can develop within neighborhoods or redevelop in neighborhoods. And that's the kind of creativity that we have to think about. That worked for a lot of people back in the 70s and certainly helped people get on their feet and then move into a single family home. And that is the American dream, right? To start out, my first house was a 2-bedroom, no basement, small square ranch that we got on our hands and knees and scrubbed the floors clean, resurfaced them ourselves, because once we got into that house, there was no money left to do any renovations. We changed windows ourselves. We had a cardboard box, and that was the grill came in so that we'd have a table to eat on. So I know what that really feels like when you're starting out and trying to make ends meet. And I think that, you know, those, like you said, and even like what Tony said, how do we change the regulations to work for the needs we have right now? And to find ways to get credit for affordability that we haven't thought about yet.
I'm going to stay on this question or just plummet a little deeper. Housing development is often politicized, making it harder to make progress. How can we make sure that housing development is treated as something necessary for all instead of a political hot potato?
So my opponent indicated that she would be looking into redeveloping neighborhoods. I think that has an adverse effect to bring this type of housing into neighborhoods, single-family neighborhoods. I think that's what the uproar was, and people were affected by it because they don't want apartments alongside a single-family house because they feel it's going to bring the value down of their house. These houses are about, you know, they're taller, they look down on people, and it's very dense. What Matt said as an urban developer, which I agree with, is you have to follow the plan of conservation and development. There are strategic places in Milford, on collector streets, on main roads, on bus lines, near the train station. That's where I want to encourage this type of development, not in single-family neighborhoods. That's the problem. People do not want to feel invaded. A single-family neighborhood should remain a single-family neighborhood. But due to 830-G and the regulations, there's loopholes, as you know. So what I want to do is work with the state assembly. I'll go up there myself if I have to and speak in front of these boards to get some of these other dwellings that we have to count as our affordability so we can meet our percentage so we won't be faced with reckless development. Thank you.
I think this is the beautiful part of tonight, because this is what conversation is all about, and I'm afraid you misunderstood me. So I'm not looking to put apartment buildings in single-family neighborhoods, by no means. What I was referring to were the duplexes in Point Beach, and those of us who live down in that area know that they exist. And it looks like a home that has 2 separate entrances. And it allows for additional opportunities like the ADUs for people to have smaller but housing in those neighborhoods. I'm not talking about giant developments within our single family, but maybe the duplexes would work as we redevelop existing houses that maybe are in great need. I've knocked on doors where it's clearly overgrown, it's clearly in need of repair, windows are clearly leaking, and we all know if we don't maintain our homes, we're paying more to heat them, more to cool them,
if we're not keeping them maintained properly. And that's where we have the opportunity to address some of these regulation changes, which would allow for a duplex in a single family neighborhood. And that's all I meant by that. So this is the great part of conversation where we can misunderstand each other and then correct it. So I'm glad we've had that opportunity. And Jamie, did you?
That's fine. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jamie Rood. I'm a 35-year resident now of Milford. Milford is my home. My husband and I, cemented our relationship here and bought a home before we could get married. We got married in the very first wave. I love Milford. And I just need to say what an extraordinary evening this is. I have both Carrie and Tony's signs on my front lawn. Both of them have been coming to every All In for Milford monthly event, month after month. So I'm feeling like we can't go wrong here because we've created a seat at the table for all of us. I was at the mayor's State of the City, and I could tell that Rich was very nervous, anxious about the moratorium being dropped, and he said, "We don't want projects going up in everyone's backyard." And it just sort of took me back because, MetroStar has put up 30 projects in everyone's backyard, including mine, and they're 4 stories tall, but they're not affordable. So, a wink and a nudge, and they've gone through. The zoning laws were changed. Oh, we'll just move the MDC 1 parcel. That won't affect Bert and Jamie and Walter, who have lived there for 30 years. Well, guess what? It does. What I like to think about is something called attainable housing. We've turned affordable housing into a dirty word. It's about projects and those people moving into our neighborhoods. And that's not what Milford's about. Across the street from me was a bankrupt condominium, and I won't tell you what kind of tenants were in there until the city took it over, and wonderful families got moved in, and there has not been a problem there on the corner of West Main and High Street in 15 years since that happened. So I feel we can't lose. No matter who is elected mayor, I know we will work together. There's a lot of Republicans in this room tonight. There's a lot of Democrats. I don't know who they are because we're all working on the same things together, the things that matter, that keep the small city with a big heart that way and continue to show that that big heart's happening. Thanks.
One more point on this. Who are the groups and organizations that you would work with to make sure that there's housing for the people in town who need it? I'll start this way.
The groups that we would work with, everybody and anybody who's willing to help us figure out the best way to redevelop some of the commercial properties that exist now that are not, have so many vacancies. But we also have to work with our own town and planning and zoning and making sure that we're following the regulations or changing regulations that within state statute that allow us to make the creative changes that we're all talking about tonight. But I wanted to just say that there are so many great organizations in Milford that are working on these issues, and I had an opportunity to talk to Jen this summer about a situation that I became aware of, and I know that there's these inner workings within the city that help the unhoused population find housing. And unfortunately, having come to some of these meetings, I know that we haven't housed anyone here in Milford in years. And that's the thing that's disappointing, is that you know, we talk about these things and we talk about these things and we recognize that there's a real issue, but it's what are we going to do that's actionable, that actually can give someone a place to live that's in a very difficult time in their lives. And that's the part that I want to be really cognizant of, and making sure that I find the connections to make that happen.
Tony?
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I would like to reach out to the seniors, the veterans, because they need affordable housing. They're struggling. The young people that move into this community, that want to stay here, like Matt, for instance, eventually went from renter to homeowner. I want to have people, give them the opportunity to make that transition. So once again, it's strategic development. It comes through experience. It comes through collaboration. It comes through someone who has business experience. I have 35 years of business experience, so I know how to effectuate change in a positive way. This community is near and dear to my heart. I come here with compassion. When I talk to you with sincerity. And I tell you, as your mayor, these things will be addressed. I know they had been forgotten about, but it's a new day. Thank you.
Just want to remind people too, don't be afraid to come into the inner circle. It's pretty safe in here, as you can tell. And I'm sure there are a lot more ideas and questions out around, so please tap away. I'm going to go on to the third question. Milford is a thriving and prosperous community. Yet according to the United Way, 31% of Milford residents are earning less than the basic costs of living. That's nearly 1 in every 3 people who live in Milford. Now, we've already talked about this in terms of the cost of housing. What will you do, and what can everyone in Milford do to bring the other costs of living within reach? I think we'll start this way.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I think about often, especially having been at the education communication event held at Foreign, I believe it was last night, these all blur together, but the food insecurity is a huge piece of affordability. And one of the things that came up in the group that I was having a discussion with was how do we know who is coming to school hungry? And so we're relying on our teachers and to know who these kids are, and to I heard a story back in the day that if a kid came to school and didn't have their lunch money, they got 2 pieces of bread and a slice of cheese. And it scared me because, we don't do that, do we? And I am blessed to be the registrar of voters and work in Parsons, and I happened to be in the hallway at the same time with Eileen Fostich, who is the food service provider director, and I asked her what happens, and what happens to children who, we talked about, whoever was here early talked about breakfast, and not wasting that food if a kid has already eaten breakfast at home, that we can make sure somebody who needs that food gets it and it doesn't just get thrown away. And those are the little things that we do through this kind of communication to find out what the stories are. And even Tom Parsons was somebody who I've heard many stories about that knew who the families were that in the winter needed an extra jacket or an extra pair of boots for a child who didn't have them. So that they could get back and forth to school. So, we want everybody to feel the same and feel ready to learn, and that's where it starts. And so we do that by communicating in a way that is not judgmental, and that's why it's so important that a kid without lunch money gets the same lunch as everybody else, and that those issues are worked out later on in a manner that doesn't involve students being aware of what's happening. And so that's.
Sure. So we've already talked about, let me go back and just reread it so I don't misstate it. So Milford is a thriving and prosperous community, yet 31% of Milford residents earn less than the basic costs of living, which is nearly 1 in 3 people who live in Milford. What would you do as mayor, and what could other people who are residents of Milford do to help bring down these other costs of living, not just the housing costs?
That's a good question. So I can't control the price of gas. I can't control the price of groceries. But as your mayor, I can tell you that you're going to feel protected. I can control public safety. I can make sure that these nonprofits are well funded for the people that need them, especially the kids. My wife, Andrea, she works with Food to Kids. She works in the school system, and it's very discreet. And, you know, we have to take care of our community. We have to take care of each other. And as your mayor, that's what I intend to do, to address these issues head on, collaborate with the different people, the stakeholders that are helping us move forward as a community, whether it's the Purple Pantry, Food to Kids. We have a lot of resources. So I would love to collaborate with them and learn from them and grow. Thank you.
Any of our residents here who would like to comment or add another thought on this question? Well, we're going to plumb it a little more, so let's see if I can get you. Does anybody want to come forward? Okay, somebody's getting tapped. Bye, Matt. All right. Hi, would you like to comment?
Yes. I'm Norma Genitasio, Tony's mom. I have a couple of things. You brought up the fact about the food that's wasted, and I agree on that, but I also know that there are little things that you could do. Probably as a mother of 4, I stretched my budget. When Tony's father and I moved to Milford in the 70s, we decided to move to Milford because we couldn't start a business in Norwalk. There wasn't enough land of what we needed. So we found the property in Milford, but we were short on the down payment, and we needed to borrow from the owner of the property for money, a second loan for our down payment, and borrow $3,000 from our in-laws for a truck. At the end of that closing, we had $138 in our pocket with 3 children. I didn't have the 4th one yet. So I know what it is to struggle to come to Milford. So glad we came to Milford. But I know that when coming to the waste, I know what it is to worry about wasting food, worry about going grocery shopping and make the best of everything you cook and you make so it stretches and it lasts. My mother was a Depression wife, so she used 1 tea bag for 2 cups of tea. But to get back to the real reality of it, there are simple ways when children do throw away food, and I'm sure they do, even in church groups where they have funding for kids for summer to bring in food. I've heard stories about churches where the kids are throwing away apples, oranges. Can't there be a table, discreetly, in the lunchroom? It's called a share table, a simple table that says share table. All the kids know discreetly, if they want an apple, they go to the share table and take an apple. They want an extra sandwich, someone didn't want their sandwich, it's wrapped, they're entitled to the sandwich. They're entitled to the yogurt, the Jell-O, whatever it is. It's a simple concept, but if every school does it, guess what? It works. It works, okay? And a lot of kids could be fed by that. And another thing I'm going to steal from Facebook is, I'm a believer about going to Dunkin' Donuts and paying for the guy behind me. There was a recommendation on Facebook, don't bother doing that. Call the schools up and ask them what kids are delinquent in their food money. And give that kid, put it in his account for his food. It's great to give a Dunkin' Donuts coffee to the guy behind you, but don't you feel a whole lot better giving it to a kid in the school and putting $10 towards his account? And the other thing I wanted to bring up was, I'm a hairdresser. If you got a bunch of us hairdressers in Milford, we all love each other. We're all very, very friendly. We socialize together. We're a great community. Myself, I would start it. I would initiate it. Every hairdresser in Milford would be glad to give up 1 day a week to give free haircuts to kids or to homeless people. I know myself would, and I know at least 10 hairdressers that I could call tonight that would be willing to give up one day in their salon to give out free haircuts. It'd keep the kid well groomed, no one would make fun of him, the parents would look good, maybe be able to go for an interview to get a job. So that's community to me. So it's not so hard to make the little things work. It's hard for the big things, but not for the little things. You're welcome. I'm going to leave my chair.
Carrie, did you want to add something? No? No. Okay, Tony?
Well, a vote for me is a vote for Norma. Thank you, Mom. I've learned a lot from my parents, and, you know, I think it goes back to your childhood. You know, we're talking about, you know, food insecurity. I remember in 3rd grade coming home with a UNICEF box, and my mother asking me, what is that? What are you going to do with that? I said, well, the teacher handed them out, and we're supposed to collect money, and it goes to UNICEF to feed people all over the world. And what my mother mentioned to you about where I grew up, it was mixed use. There was a house with a garage where my dad started his business, and we lived there. So when you looked out of my bedroom window, you saw my father's trucks, because he couldn't afford to have 2 separate places. So, you know, it's like the American dream. You start a business out of your house. My mother was cutting hair, you know, in the kitchen. I remember as a kid walking in, and she was giving perms. And it was like, you know, what is that odor? But these are the things that we do. We sacrifice, you know, for the next generation. And that's what I want to encourage people to do in Milford. I think it's healthy. And, you know, it comes full circle. You know, I did a great job raising money for UNICEF, and my teacher said, I can't believe the money you keep bringing in here. Where are you getting this money? Because most kids, you know, they'll ask their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles. Well, living on the Post Road, growing up there, I had a bicycle, so I was biking around when people were coming into the furniture stores and the hardware stores. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm in 3rd grade, I'm trying to raise money for UNICEF, and people were glad to donate. So Mom, thank you for that story. Thank you.
I'm going to stay on this question, but take it a little different direction. Do you agree that we need to do more than provide services, that we need to make policies that eliminate the need for those services in the first place? And if so, what policies would you pursue as mayor? You're so generous, Tony.
Wow, that's hard. At least we can agree that that's a tough one, because you know that it's not something that we haven't had in our society forever. This is not a new problem. This is something that we see in somewhat cyclical as times are better and more prosperous, where 1 in 3 families are not struggling. We don't think about it. And when we find ourselves in a time when 1 in 3 families is struggling, then we start to talk about it again. And I think maybe the policy should be more proactive, more planning, more awareness that things happen over and over. That's history repeating itself. And that makes me think of my parents and grandparents. Because if we don't, we've seen it. This isn't new. So the policies that have to change are what we do in tough times. And we talked when Matt, I think it was Matt, was sitting next to me about, you know, will we do something in time for you? And I think that's the policy or the you know, the plan of conservation and development, that we really need to follow it so that in 5 years, we're not all sitting here 5 years older with another generation wondering where they're going to live. And it's a tough question. I know that's not the greatest answer, but you know, I think thoughtfulness and planning is really the key to all of this.
Anyone, I mean, I can give this to Tony, but is there anyone here that also feels like add to this question. This is a toughie, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to repeat it.
You can take your time.
It is a hard question, and it should be a hard question. If it were easy, it'd be pretty embarrassing that we hadn't solved it yet. It would be a pretty sad state of affairs. Like you pointed out, these problems have existed as long as human beings have been alive. What's enabled us to survive at all is that we do take care of each other. People, I'm all the time inspired by generosity. I was at the Bethel Center a couple weeks ago. All-In has been, encouraging them to participate in events. And I was just so moved by the generosity of people who were using the services at Bethel, and yet were so ready to donate their time, to donate whatever they had to help, because they understand that these are systemic problems. That being said, sometimes there are things that we can do that aren't that difficult. So, as an example, the Board of Alders passed, because there was a state mandate, a new ordinance to create a fair rent commission. And we don't have one yet because the mayor actually needs to identify people who can serve on the Fair Rent Commission and set it up. It takes 5 people and some alternates. So that's an example of something that either one of you as mayor could prioritize, because that's a commission that if a landlord, they don't do rent control, but if the landlord is abusing their authority, for example, not repairing things, or if they raise rent too quickly in a way that can be considered inhumane, they can step in and prevent that from happening. So that's, not to feed you an answer, but the point is that doesn't solve our society-wide problems of poverty, but it does create a fix that gives people a way to solve one of these problems. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Thanks for the mic, Joe. That was a great answer. If you wouldn't mind repeating the question, just.
So, do you agree that we need to do more than provide services, that we need to make policies that eliminate the need for these services in the first place? And if so, what policies would you pursue as mayor?
So, with problems brings opportunity and solutions. So I would reach out to the private sector, businesses, like the mall, for instance. They're coming in, they're doing this big development. If we could carve out a space in the mall, and I'm sure they'd be happy to do it because they seem like very reasonable people, they're very community oriented, and we share our struggles as a community with the biggest taxpayer in Milford, and maybe we can bring food there, drop it off, because everyone usually goes to the mall pretty much empty-handed, right? And bring it there, collect it, have volunteers there that inventory it, and then maybe people that are there that are in need see the kiosk and recognize that we're reaching out, and they can pick something up while they're there and bring it home and make it more accessibility. I think the more you educate people and you bring them aware of their surroundings and what's happening, and that's what I've learned here in All In for Milford. I'm learning my surroundings. I'm learning the truth of what's really happening behind the curtain, behind the scenes. That's the education that I take from this. So I would reach out to these businesses that are here providing jobs, opportunity, and partner with them. Thank you.
So I think in some ways, perhaps the two of you have addressed this, but I'm going to pose it specifically. On day one, what is your plan for addressing food insecurity in Milford?
Well, I'm going to tell Sue Brown to get a purple pantry at the mall. Day one. Look, these things are good because it gives us an opportunity to humanize one another, to really recognize that we are here in the best interest. But, one of my top priorities just from being involved in this campaign and this endeavor is the number of people in the community that really do want to help. And we are doing a boards and commission open house. I hope that people in the community that are willing and able to serve and get involved will come out to that. And I can tell you that I've met lots of people who I say to them, I'm writing down that you're willing to serve on a board or commission. Are you okay with that? Because on day one, you're going to get a call from me. And they laugh, but they say yes. And I think that's the key is we have been showing up. We have been getting educated. But how do we get, and we talked about, I know I've brought this up now a couple of times, but even last night when we talk about the ever-changing education needs, it's the people that we're not getting to come out here and talk with us that we have to reach. So how do we do that? And my daughter said I have to have an open house at City Hall where people can come in and talk directly to me. And I think she's right. And I think it can't just be in the morning for seniors. I think it has to be in the evening for people who work. I think we have to do newsletters. It's not enough, people can opt out of those calls about propane tank pickup and the parades and things like that. They need to know what's happening and they need to know how to get involved when they can help. But more importantly, the people who need the help need to know how to get it. And so that's the part of the communication I want to make sure that I'm addressing from day one.
Thank you, Carrie. My name is Kara, and I'm a new Milford resident. I've lived here, I guess, a little over a year now. I also volunteer with Milford Pride, and I wanted to ask about, I was jumping in earlier around schools. So another all-in mission is that everyone should have a voice at the table as a basic, basic need, human right. And so in terms of schools, but just in general, I wanted to ask you both, as mayor, how would you make sure that every resident of Milford, whether of any age, gender, sexual orientation, so whether you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, whether you're a student in school or a resident, how will you welcome our voices at the table? Because Milford is a welcoming, diverse place, but I don't know that we always broadcast that or do as good of a job as we can to make sure all residents know that. So maybe you could address that.
So thank you. Yeah, Milford is blessed with a very diverse community, and I would embrace that as mayor. And we have flag raisings. That's where I think we first met. And, it's something that needs to be recognized, and we should be, embracing that. And it happens to be Italian Heritage Month. We raised the Italian flag just the other day. I'm proud of my heritage. We're all proud of, where we come from, regardless of our background. And, that's opportunity. And, we are the small city with the big heart, and I think that shows. And I would definitely, encourage people to feel good about themselves and feel proud of who they are. I think that's what makes our community strong. Thank you.
I think we have to talk about the real difficulty, which is that people are afraid to come out and congregate because of the threats of violence against this community. And we just saw it recently where a Pride event was canceled, I believe, in New Haven because of threats. And so, for me, it's about showing up at Cafe Atlantique when we had an event there and not being afraid. We came together as a country at 9/11 because we didn't want to be afraid. We wanted to show the world that we were not afraid.
we were hurt, but we came together. And I think that should be a real shining star example of how, in your question, that we can come together and show up. You don't have to be a member of the community. You can be an ally of the community. And the more times we show up and not show the bigotry and the hatred room for growth, because we are stronger in numbers and we're stronger together. And I think that's exactly what all in means to me, anyway.
So Kara must have looked over my shoulder to see, so this was the fourth question. But actually, you just led into it. I'm just going to nuance it a little bit so you can all hear Plum a little deeper. And I'll just read it as stated. Building a stronger community means making it possible for everyone in the community to be able to participate in the decisions that affect our lives. How can we make public decision-making more open and more accessible to everyone?
I think it is open and accessible to everyone. I think we, have a great community. We have the great spirit of volunteers. I mean, that's how I got started in public service. I don't come from a political family. It's just everyone's interested in different things, and my public service just evolved. And I think it's whatever you're interested in, there's an organization that represents that. And, that's the culture of Milford. That's what makes Milford, Milford. That's why we have the slogan, the small city with the big heart. And I would encourage people to go to that forum at City Hall. I think Mayor Smith and Julie Nash are doing a good thing. It's an outreach. And I would continue with that. I believe in it. I want to inspire people. That's why I'm running for mayor. I don't want people to feel in fear. We were just at West Shore School, and we spoke in front of 8th graders. And at the end, I was handing out some cards to some kids that approached me, and I got a call from one of the parents, and we talked about mental health. And she said, I just want to call you, my son came home, and you gave him the card, and he says, Ma, this guy, when he was speaking, he spoke right to me. He understood my struggles, because some of us are anxious, some of us even get depressed, and we're all human. And that, to me, was worth the world. If I can touch someone like that in a moment, I want to do that over and over and over again, because I have compassion. And I told these kids, respect each other, be nice to each other. We're all different, but we all make one community. We all have different interests, different backgrounds, but we're all one community. Thank you.
Maybe, and just to add, so maybe the openness is there for decision-making. What do you think are the challenges that keep people from getting involved? Carrie, you mentioned fear. What are the other challenges that keep the people of Milford from becoming more involved?
You tapped in. I didn't want to forget that she tapped in, but I.
Right. And now I know I'll come right back to you.
So yeah, I mentioned fear in terms of a pride event, and people, have told me that they're afraid to congregate in those kinds of events where there's hatred out there. And I think I want to disagree a little bit with Tony in that we are open and we've made a lot of progress. That is true, but we still have a long way to go. I've seen it at the doors, people saying things that I would go so far as to say are hate. And anger, and I think that it goes all the way back, and it ties from the very beginning of our conversation to the fact that people are struggling. If 1 in 3 families are struggling because things are too expensive to what they can afford based on where they're working in this moment, that generates the fear. and it grows from there. I also, I am glad that somebody felt touched by your comments, because I had somebody reach out to me that, there is a stigma around mental health. And if we say there isn't, then we've made the stigma worse, because there are people who are afraid to talk about what they're feeling. It's a real thing. And I wouldn't trust anyone in this room to tell you my inner fears, because that stigma is real. And what I may say right now today is out in the world. So I'm not sharing that part of me. So if I'm feeling that, I'm not alone. And I know that there are kids that feel the same way too. And even the share table, it's a great idea. And I remember how hard kids can be, and I have stories from my own children that kids are tough. And it's a great idea, but unless there's an adult monitoring that, there's a kid that's gonna say something that isn't nice. And if they're saying it to me out in public, we have to do more work to stop that kind of judgment. And it all goes back to, how do you stop it? By making them feel secure that they're not gonna lose their home, or they're gonna be able to feed their kids at night, because that's the reality. So it's very cyclical, and each individual problem has to be addressed. And I think this is a good start. I don't want it to feel like it's not conquerable, because I do believe in the positive energy and the things that come out of events like this, where we do talk about where maybe we don't agree, and find the common ground so that we move forward together and address those issues with actionable items.
Thank you for your patience. No, that's okay. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm backing up to a question before, but you both addressed it in your answers just now. And this is a really great group that's here with us, and I'm looking around the room. What are you going to do to encourage our youth to get more involved in this? Because if I'm being honest with you, the kids need to be just as important as our seniors and our veterans. I want them to still live here. I want our older family members to be able to, they want to tap out in the town that they're here, and that's a great thing. I have 4 children, from 9 years old to 31 years old. My older children do not live in Milford. They can't afford to live in Milford. My son joined the Air Force to try and save some money to get a better education. He stayed out west. He can't afford to come back to Milford. And I want to know what you are going to do to encourage our youth to get more involved. Social media is a great thing. It's also a terrible thing. A lot of people share way too many things. But when there's somebody in need and they post it on, everybody jumps in and helps that person out. But we have to do something to encourage the youth to get more involved. And I'd like to hear from you both on an idea that you would have to do that, because somebody's got to take over when we're gone. So I'd like to hear from you on that.
Thank you. So, yes, I mean, I've always been a big supporter of the youth sports especially, and the Boys and Girls Club. I like to lead by example. I mean, kids have, very difficult decisions to make at a very young age of, who they want to be or who they think they are, and they're not really sure, I mean, I never thought that I would be in public service, and here I am running for mayor. But that's the journey. That's the excitement about life. You become who you are through how you're raised and the community that you live in and the people that you meet along the way. And that's what makes you who you are. So I would encourage kids to try different things, different jobs that they have interest in, whether it's working in a restaurant, hospitality, manufacturing. I mean, we have so many resources. We have Platt Technical High School, which was it's a brand new school. I mean, my mom also volunteered at Platt as a hairdresser and trained people on her day off and helped usher those people and mentor those people. And I think if we can put more of those programs to work, I think the kids are going to feel more secure. They're going to feel like we are looking after them. We do have their best interests, because we need to replace ourselves. You know, and there's a lot of different jobs. I would encourage kids, you know, to get out there and you know, work as much as they want, you know, and ask questions. That's how I've always learned. I encourage children to ask questions, ask a lot of questions. And that will direct you in different areas of what you feel comfortable doing. You know, I mean, I encourage kids to serve for their country. I mean, we honor the veterans. I've walked in so many parades throughout my 20 years, you know. I volunteered my time. I respect veterans. I've always been to their parades. And I would encourage the youth, if they have an interest, to do that. That's honorable. So those are the types of things that I think about. Thank you.
So there are just a couple more parts to this final question, and oh, I'm sorry, absolutely.
Because I want to answer Christina's question in a two-part answer. The first is that my husband is an Air Force veteran as well, and he went to college because his grandfather forced him to, was like what you had to do, and he failed out. I mean, he never went to school, to class ever. And I think he was probably very fearful to come home after that year and said, I better do this, and left. The only reason he came back is because my father worked at Bayer Pharmaceutical and got him a job as an equipment cleaner. And he literally was cleaning the equipment, an entry-level job. He is now an IT director who works in a company in Florida and is very successful. And so I think your question is, how do we give those opportunities to our kids today? And that's the hard part. And so now I'll go to the second part of my answer, which is partnership. I think you and I would agree that, and we all in this room, if we were paying attention through this last budget cycle, saw that there was not quite a partnership between our education and our city. There was a difference of opinion about how to navigate the cut that came in the middle of the process. And I think that if we can partner, the mayor's office and the city, with the Board of Ed, then we begin to create solutions for these kids. And in this event last night, we had multiple business owners saying to us loud and clear that kids are not ready to take the jobs that they have right here locally. We're losing them because they can't afford to live here. And that's what I was talking about, the cyclicalness of this and the dichotomy that we're creating, because we are not doing it fast enough. And it goes right back to Matt, where we're not going to have housing to force the capitalism, to force the rents to come down in time to save Matt. And we're not going to do that for the next few years with our kids if we don't figure out what they need to stay here and get jobs that allow them to afford to live here. And so that's why this partnership is so important, and that a partnership between our city government and understanding our real budget issues that we are going to face because of all of the costs. This isn't just a housing issue. This is everything in our budget has gone up. And so how do we get kids ready for the jobs that are available? And you know, I went to an economic development meeting recently as well, and they talked a lot about the mall development and how that can help in pieces of this because of the housing aspect, because we're generating a more successful mall, which then has an assessed value that goes up, which then generates more tax revenue, and it's a win-win-win. And I don't know, I mean, I think a lot of us were born in the 70s. I know that you and I are similar age. Well, a game that I played was SimCity. And it, you know, and one of the business owners was an e-gaming company. And you know, the truth is, we think of those things as silly. Well, I just happened to look it up after, because while the economic development consultant was talking, I was thinking, you're going to need a fire department. You're going to need another firehouse. You're going to need more firemen if you keep adding these housing units, because that's what would happen in SimCity. And so I talked to him after about it, and he didn't know about the game, and he's a little bit older. And I think it's important. I think, look at that. Kids are learning things from these games. There are businesses, successful businesses growing right here in Milford that involve gaming.
So there, it is a little of both. We don't want our kids in that social media and in that gaming all the time, because we need to be able to have conversations face to face. But it also is an opportunity for them to find something that they are passionate about. And so those are the kinds of things we need to think about that's a little bit different from when all of us were in school.
Anybody here in the circle want to add to anything that Carrie said? Tony?
I would just add, based on my background, coming from a family of entrepreneurs, that I would encourage kids to take a risk. Start a business. There's a lot of pride in that. Hire people, employ people. It's rewarding as a business owner to have people work and knowing that you're seeing their family prosper, you're providing health insurance, they're doing, a great job, you reward them, you encourage them. As a business owner, I've helped a lot of people along the way, a lot of good people, and I think maybe start some kind of an entrepreneur program, maybe to educate kids that want to start their own businesses. I think that could be really effective. And I would like to do things like that creatively and encourage them. I think that's what we need to do. I think as long as they know that there's optimism and there's opportunity. This is the greatest country in the world. This is the richest country in the world. Nobody should go without food. No one. And people should be able to live affordable living. And that's a direction that I want to take Milford. So thank you.
Let me guess, where are we on time, Teresa? So do we have time for one more question? So this is kind of, yeah. This is the final. How can we keep working together and keep this conversation going after we leave here tonight?
I would just say that the conversation never ends. It's evolving. It's through education. As your next mayor, my door will always be open to new ideas. I'm not an expert, but I've developed relationships with department heads throughout the 20 years of my public service. I'm proud of my service. I've had the privilege of working with 3 mayors. I've learned from each and every one of them. And I've demonstrated leadership as becoming the minority leader of the Board of Aldermen for the past 12 years. My party endorsed me. They put me in that role. They entrusted me with my knowledge, my experience. And I think that's the big difference here, is you have to have the knowledge, the experience, not just in public service or city government, but business as well. I'm uniquely qualified for the position. I know what it takes to be mayor firsthand. It's consistency, sound judgment, and collaboration. And that's what I intend to do. To listen to everyone, their needs, and meet those needs as a community. And to work with the state, the governor, the state representatives, the state senators, to bring back grants, bring back funding, to help support all the needs of this community. Thank you.
Hi, David Morgan. I have no horse in this race. I want to echo, first of all, the Reverend's comments. Kudos and thank you so much for stepping into the public space and this level of servant leadership. I think it says a lot about each of you, and it says a lot about the beautiful city of Milford. I'm inspired by Christina's question and a couple of the comments. I feel like the common denominator is affordability in homes, and I especially appreciated what you said about, forgive me, let me back up for a second. I work at a nonprofit team, and in just the last year, and we see it every year, but just in the last year, we saw a little over 2,500 residents of Milford turn to team in some of the most difficult of circumstances. And I can say to you, and they could articulate it a lot better than I, so I'm going to, it overwhelms me emotionally and intellectually to tell you what, all these different walks of life, but I can tell you every road leads to homes and the affordability. Far too often, and to Christina's point, residents are making really difficult choices. They're spending, I heard a gentleman say earlier, you know, it is very real. They're spending 40, 50, 60 cents for every dollar they're working their butts off for that roof over their head, and they're making really difficult decisions around, can I pay for the prescription? Gotta pay my taxes. If I got kids, I got some costs there, transportation, and so on. And I wanna ask, if I may, Lynn, a pretty practical, very technical, laser-focused question that I think, you know, yeah, have some water. Just less than 40 days, well, we're all watching, and again, the city of Milford made a beautiful promise. I heard each of you touch on it. I heard somebody touch on it earlier. I believe it was about 18 months ago, going off my cuff here, an affordable housing plan. And what we mean by that, homes for all people. You know, I mean, it just resonates. Again, I see 2,500 plus residents of Milford, but our Gen Zs and our millennials, our older adults, I've seen them look me in the eye and say, I can't afford to stay in the place I raised my family and I spent with my loving partner. And so the city of Milford did a beautiful job and made a promise to Milford, an affordable housing plan. And again, that was about 18 months ago. And I say with loving agitation, I ask with loving agitation, what is the next step? And I think it's part of the question Lynn asked about transparency. And what a beautiful exemplar tonight, a public space, the public optics, and each of you really speaking from your heart and mind, you know, about what a home is, and people who want to put their flag in the ground and call Milford my home for myself and my loved ones. And so my question is, less than 40 days, someone's going to be the mayor. And Milford's in really good hands, whichever that outcome is. My question to you is, what will you do to actually implement a committee that can actually repeat the beauty of what just happened tonight? The questions, the exchanges, veterans, older adults, Gen Zers, millennials, our emergency first responders, our Milford School District that wants, they need teachers, our childcare workers, our retail, our hospitality. There seems to be this 18-month pause, and there's such a sense of urgency. So my question to both of you is, when you become mayor, what will you do to actually continue this dialogue via an affordable housing committee? You created a blueprint, but with loving agitation, it's still been sitting. I'm not pointing at you two, just holding the mirror up, folks. It's been sitting there for 18 months.
I think that's a great point, and I think you're absolutely right. We need to, I think Joe gave us the answer that starts with that Fair Rent Commission. It needs to be acted on, it needs to be developed so that they can get to work. And I think we need to have some sort of a committee. When I served on the Board of Aldermen, I served on a senior and veteran tax relief committee that enacted change so that more seniors and veterans got some relief and even exemption. And got the help that they needed. So there's that we can look at. There's the Fair Rent Commission, and there's also a committee that maybe works with our nonprofits. That's a board and commission that comes out of that open house. And I want to go back to Lynn's question about how do we keep it going in a different way, because I want to say that government is for the people, by the people, of the people, right? And so anybody in this room can run for mayor. I told the 8th graders that the one thing I wanted them to take away from that event that we did with them is any one of them could run for mayor one day too. There is no qualification. There is no, you don't have to have a certain experience. It's not like AG where you have to be an attorney and you have to have practiced. This is about who you are and what you believe in, and showing that to the people who vote
And if you win the vote, you become the mayor. And then it's whether or not you can do the job, and you're evaluated 2 years later. And so I'm not afraid of that. And I'm not afraid of that I've never owned a business, and that I've served 2 years, not 16 years as an alderman, because I know the things that I've done in the community have prepared me for this moment. And that includes my work in the Registrar of Voters Office, where I've served with honesty and integrity and transparency, so that everybody here in Milford, as elections have come under scrutiny nationwide like never before, they know that when they cast a vote here, it's counted accurately. And if we can bring something like that into City Hall, that transparency, that honesty, that integrity, and that fairness, we're going to be a better community for it.
And I think we have the final word.
So things are starting to build a little bit, but we're in a safe place. And I would just like to share that my opponent never served on a veterans commission to cut veterans taxes. I did my research. It's not the first time that she claims, but I can tell you, sitting on the Board of Aldermen, I actually casted the vote, and I was part of the process in passing senior and veterans tax relief, and that's a fact. My opponent talks about transparency, honesty, integrity as a register of voters. However, unfortunately, someone on her ballot that she claims she didn't know was not a registered voter. Okay, but I just want to make sure that we're all being honest, that's all. Thank you.
All right, Teresa, I think we're set.
Yeah, Carrie, did you want to say anything?
Stand by what I said.
Okay. First of all, I apologize that that went off the rails at the end a little bit there. Let's give it up for Lynn, our fabulous moderator for this evening. And, well, I want to thank a whole bunch of folks. Thank you for letting us go over time. Pastor Matt Lindemann at St. Peter's, and especially for Milford Government Access Television. Thank you so much all for being here a little after we had anticipated, and for those of you who are watching at home. Especially thank Carrie and Tony for recognizing the importance of community participation and democracy, and for committing to addressing the issues brought up tonight. Rather than being adversarial, as we are so often encouraged to do, All In for Milford works to encourage us all to find common ground and recognize that we don't have to agree on everything in order to work together to make our community better for everyone. We urge you to join All In for Milford. Check out our website. We have wristbands. Take one on your way out. Visit us on Facebook, and feel free to talk to any of us who are here. We also encourage you to reach out and follow up with anyone you may have met here tonight. Please join our next community gathering on food security for our youth. It's on the evening of Thursday, November 2nd at the YMCA. Before you leave, we invite you to join us in a group photo and to stay afterwards to talk with the candidates, enjoy some more goodies, and thank you all so much for participating tonight.